Project Save Kevin Holland's career. This man is 1 to 2 fights away from being cut from the UFC, and I would hate to see that because even though through all the antics, I still do enjoy Kevin Holland as a fighter and as a personality. Even though he can be bland sometimes, even though he can make me incredibly angry with his fight style, I still love Kevin Holland, and I do not want to see him being cut from the UFC because of his own antics. Because he is good enough to be in the UFC, he is good enough to be a contender, but he just has problems. First off, he needs to stop changing divisions. He needs to stick to one division. He can't keep flopping between middleweight and welterweight. And as you can see, this is the years that he's been in middleweight from 2019 to 2021 when he got his first short notice fight against Thiago Santos, and 2024 to 2025, which is his last few fights, as you see here on the right. And in that time, he's done 9-7-1, with the one being where he got headbutted by Kyle Dawkins and KO'd, which was turned to a no contest. And that welterweight was from 2022 to 2024, where he went 4-3. He had some success, but as you can see, it wasn't long lived. And he's 1-4 in his last five, and that one win being over Mikhail Olajaychik, where he got dropped, and he eventually submitted him with an armbar, dislocating his elbow. But he's on a 2-fight losing streak, and I could see the UFC cutting him in the next 1 to 2 fights if he loses, because they pay him like $250,000 a show. 250, maybe. I know they pay him $250,000 a show. They may pay him $250,000 to win. That's a lot of money for a guy he's a decent name, but he's not a big enough name to just keep letting him lose like this. The second thing he needs to do to save his career is actually try. He always comes into fights with excuses. He's afraid of losing, and as you can see here, a quote from him: "Normally I slack off when I get a top guy. I'm going to get a lot of money, and I'll go back to fighting bums if I lose." He's too scared to try his hardest, because if he tries his hardest and loses, then he'll feel more bad about himself. He's afraid to try his hardest because if he loses, then he knows he's not good enough. So that's why every single time he loses, there's always an excuse or he gives up. Like in this fight right here, against Roman Dolidze, he said he got taken down, and he was just like, oh. After a while, he just said, "Oh, my rib," but he's back fighting a few months later. And then in this fight on the bottom right, this is the fight versus Stephen Thompson, where he broke his hand in the first round and quit on the stool. Fighters who have aspirations that are actually fighters and actually want to win and actually want to make money do not quit on the stool, as you saw with Umar this weekend. Even though I don't even believe he broke his hand in that fight. He didn't quit on the stool. Morov had a broken back going into the fight. He didn't quit on the stool. There's many fighters that get injured in fights. They don't quit on the stool. He needs to stop coming in with excuses. Oh, my hand's broke. Oh, I broke my rib. And he needs to actually try and stop giving up as soon as he faces resistance. As soon as Dolidze takes him down, you can see a whole body language change in him. So I think he needs to talk to a therapist DC over here. He needs to speak to a therapist. He needs to get his mind right. I don't know what that's going to take, a change in coaching, a change in scenery, but he needs to change his mentality, because if he doesn't change his mentality, he's going to be out of the UFC very soon. Next is he needs to get better matchups for himself. He needs to stop taking short notice fights. He needs to stop taking fights with pure grapplers like Rainer de Ritter. And I think these are some good fights for him at welterweight. Kevin Holland versus Li Jingliang. I feel like that's a good fight for him because Li Jingliang isn't really gonna grapple him. He's just coming off a KO loss, so which gives an edge to him. And I feel like I don't really know if he should stick to middleweight or welterweight, but he just needs to. If he's gonna fight, he needs to pick one and stay with it. Holland versus Kevin Jousset. I don't feel like Kevin Jousset's going to shoot a lot of takedowns. He can grapple, but I don't know if he's going to grapple. Holland versus RDA. RDA is a grappler, but he's older now and he's a little bit chinny, and he's going to be coming off an injury, so I feel like that will be an approachable matchup. Daniel Rodriguez, also a striker. He's not going to wrestle. Usman also, again, can wrestle, but he did just come off that KO loss. And I feel like for Kevin Holland to do good, he needs to have a range advantage against his opponents, and all these opponents he will have a range advantage against, especially RDA. Not so much with Kevin Jousset, because Kevin Jousset is 6'2", 6'3", has a decent reach, about 76 inches, 75 inches. So, but he still has a range advantage, and I feel like he'll do well against all those people on the left. And at middleweight, Chris Curtis, of course. Chris Curtis is coming off the loss to Roman Kopylov, where he got brutally head kicked at the end of the round after a war. I feel like that would be a good fight because Chris Curtis never shoots takedowns really. He's a boxer and he likes to get in the pocket. And I feel like Kevin Holland would do a good job in not letting Chris Curtis get into the pocket and could end up chinning him, especially after that war that Chris Curtis went through. Bruno Silva, he is a striker. He cannot wrestle. He wrestled against the Pirate, one-eyed man. But other than that, he doesn't really wrestle. He's a striker, but he's on the down end of his career. I feel like Kevin Holland can do good against him and KO him. And yeah, then Tresean Gore. Tresean Gore. Okay, now Tresean Gore is a grappler, but he's not a rangy guy. He's not a dominant grappler. I feel like Kevin Holland can do well on him. Tresean Gore is not dominant. He doesn't have the greatest striking. He has a good guillotine, but I feel like Kevin Holland will not be put in a position where he can get a guillotine if he just doesn't shoot takedowns or doesn't make stupid mistakes. Holland versus Edmund Shabazian. I feel like this is the most difficult matchup in the list because Edmund Shabazian can strike, but he doesn't have the greatest grappling. In his last fight, he was out-grappled and submitted by GM3 in the third round. Classic GM3 performance. And Kevin Holland has beat GM3 in his past when he was more in his prime. And I know that's some MMA math, but I feel like Kevin Holland still will do well against Edmund Shabazian, but this would be the toughest fight out of all of them. And then Kevin Holland versus Dustin Stoltzfus. Dustin Stoltzfus is trash, and it would just be a free win for him. It would be a stand-up fight because Dustin Stoltzfus does like to scrap, and there is a possibility that he could catch Holland, but Holland does have a granite chin. He's only been dropped like one time in his career other than the headbutt KO. And I feel like Kevin Holland could catch Dustin Stoltzfus on the feet because he's so open and he's already been chinned multiple times. He was already chinned in like 20 seconds by Abbas Magomedov. So I feel like Kevin Holland could do really good against all these fighters. He just doesn't need to go up against a grappler next. That is the last thing that he should do is go up against any grappler. He needs to stop taking short notice fights. He does not need to fight 6 times this year because if he tries to fight 6 times this year, he is not going to be in the UFC by the end of the year. He's going to lose 2 fights and he's going to be out of the UFC because he's going to try to take big fights, big matchups, hard matchups for him, and he's going to lose. And he's going to blame it on something else. He's going to be like, oh, well, this, oh, well, this. He's going to have all these excuses, and he's not going to try. And yeah. Next, he needs to work on his takedown defense and get-ups. He is not super difficult to take down. He does have good scrambles initially, but once you take him down, he just accepts bottom position. We saw that versus Brunson. We especially saw that versus Brunson and Vittori. They just took him down, and he could just not get back up. I think Marvin Vittori had 18 minutes of control time versus him, and Derek Brunson also had like 15 or 16 minutes of control time versus him. But once you get him on his back, he just accepts bottom position. He needs to stop accepting bottom position. You laying in your guard does not work in MMA. This has been shown throughout the years. It does not work in MMA. Get out of your position. Use a sweep. Get feet on hips. Get your butterfly guards. You don't just, as you can see in the bottom right, he's triangling off of bottom. Versus Romidolidze. Another time he just accepted bottom position and gave up, and then came up with the "oh my rib was broken" excuse to get out of the fight. He needs to work on his takedown defense, which means he needs to switch gyms, and I think he should switch to ATT because almost all their fighters have decent to really good takedown defense. Moicano has some good takedown defense. He also has some good takedowns. Dustin Poirier has some pretty good initial takedown defense. He showed that he is well improved against Islam Makhachev. Mateus Gamrot has good takedown defense. Arman Sarukian has good takedown defense. All these fighters, they're wrestlers, and I feel like he could use some knowledge from how to defend takedowns because he clearly does not know how. He just gets dominated. I didn't even show that the Hamzat Chimaev fight, which he didn't even accept. That is one fight he actually did scramble and tried to scramble, but he was just outmatched on the ground and he just got anaconda or hit him with a dart choke. And yeah, that's pretty much it for what Kevin Holland can do. I mean, he's pretty limited because of his mentality, but I just don't want to see him take on a bunch of fights and get cut from the UFC and end up fighting in Bellator, or that doesn't even exist anymore, PFL, or end up fighting in one championship, or even a Misfits boxing match against Darren Till. I really do not want to see that. I don't want to see his career end like that. I feel like he still has it, and he can still carve himself a path in UFC. I don't think he can make it top 10 in any division because there's too many grapplers in the divisions, or there's too many people that I think can beat him, and he just doesn't have the mindset, the mentality, or necessarily the skill to do it. People very much overrate his skill. But yeah, that's it for the video. We need to save Kevin Holland. He needs to focus. He needs to lock in. He can't keep acting like a fool and acting like he doesn't care. He needs to start trying. He needs to start caring, because you can't make big paychecks. You can't get all this money if you're not in the UFC anymore. You have to be in the UFC to get these paychecks, and if you lose, you're not going to be in the UFC. Alright, I'm out.